Hello, today I am going to be making a video for my final project explaining my knowledge of the course. So today I want to discuss major theoretical perspectives of personality psychology and their main key figures. So something you should know about personality psychology is that it is a specific field of study. And there are 5 total perspectives that were formed or through various theories throughout the years. So the first one we're going to discuss today is the psychodynamic theory, or perspective, excuse me, because it does comprise of many different theories, such as Freud's psychosexual theory and Erikson's theories as well. But what they all have in common, and what the main assumptions of this theory are that the first 5 years of life shape personality, which is definitely prevalent in society and in therapies today. This is definitely integrated. I think even for people who don't study psychology, it's common knowledge that your childhood can determine your adulthood. It also assumes that the unconscious forces are most important, and that neurosis or psychological disturbances or mental illnesses result from unhealthy moving toward, against, or away from others. So isolation, not being able to connect. So something really important in this perspective is the unconscious mind, early recollections and memories, the collective unconscious, archetypes, and object relations. So the main key figures, like I mentioned, are Freud, Erikson, Alder, Carl Jung or Jung, Klein, Horney, and Fromm. The second perspective is humanistic / existential. The primary assumptions of this particular perspective are that people strive to live meaningful, happy lives in general. People are motivated by growth and psychological health. And personality is shaped by freedom of choice, response to anxiety, and awareness of death. So the main key characters are Maslow, Rogers, and May and their theories. The third perspective is dispositional. This is mainly Alport and McCrae and Costa. And this perspective assumes that people are all predisposed to behave in unique and consistent ways, and that they have unique traits. So this is like trait theory. This is one that was super interesting to me, actually, and that there are 5 trait dimensions in human personality. Traits are definitely a very common belief when it comes to personality. We all have personality traits. That's a very well-known term. Something that really interested me in this particular theory is the idea of primary traits and secondary traits, and there's something before the primary traits. It's like an all-encompassing trait, like your core trait, usually only being 1 or 2. Like, for example, Mother Teresa was altruistic, or Ebenezer Scrooge was greedy. And then you have your primary traits that somebody who knows you well would be able to describe, you know, if you're smart, you're funny, or whatever. And then you have your secondary traits, which are very situational, and your personality tends to shift around based on the situation, which I think is very true and interesting. Okay, so the next perspective is biological evolutionary. The primary assumptions of this perspective are that the foundation for thought and behavior is biological and genetic forces. This is very interesting to me because as we've progressed in psychology, we've actually learned that almost every behavior has a genetic component and an environmental component, even down to the way you drive a car, the way you talk, the way you move. It's all genetic and environmental, and they're so intertwined, they're impossible to separate. So very interesting. Another assumption is that human thought and behavior have been shaped by evolutionary forces, natural and sexual selection. So that would be Eisnick and Buss. So in this perspective, things that are important are brain structures and neurochemicals and genes. And so, you know, things like serotonin, dopamine, your amygdala, which controls your fight or flight response. The last perspective, and this video is getting quite long, so I will wrap up. The last perspective is learning or social or cognitive. The primary assumptions of this perspective is that the only explanation for behavior is the conditions that create that behavior. Learning occurs through association and consequences of our behavior. So this is going to be things like operant conditioning, like B.F. Skinner, or Bandura, Rotter, Michel, and Kelly. Learning also occurs through succeeding or failing and watching other people succeed and fail at tests. So that's going to be like Bandura's Bobo doll experiment. Personality develops as an interaction between internal and external characteristics of the person and the cognitive constructs we develop to perceive the world and others mold our personalities. Okay. So things to understand with this perspective are going to be things like conditioned responses. So when we think about Skinner and that experiment with the little boy who's now afraid of bunny rabbits the rest of his life because he had been conditioned with a loud noise every time he'd see a bunny rabbit. Or the dogs experiment where they'd salivate when they heard the bell because that meant food was coming, and things like that. Anyway, personality theory was an extremely informative class. I loved it. Please pass me. I really need it. I really need it.